The receptionist helps the little girl find her lost shoe. And the next day, the billionaire father shows up with an unexpected request. Amy Patterson adjusted the collar of her white uniform shirt and checked her name tag for the third time that morning. 29 years old, 8 of them as a receptionist at the Sterling Grand Hotel. And she still felt that pang of insecurity upon entering the lobby. The polished marble reflected the lights of the chandelier like a pool of water. Amy moved with her usual precision, calculated steps, a ready smile, a modulated voice. She was part of the decor, useful, impeccable, and completely ignored. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. Your key is ready." "Thank you." The man didn't even look up from his phone. It was like this, every day. Amy knew the names of all the guests, memorized their preferences, anticipated their needs. In return, she received distracted nods and automatic thank yous. At 10 in the morning, the lobby was quiet. Amy took the opportunity to organize the next day's reservations while other employees hurried past. No one stopped to chat. She was like a gentle ghost that everyone saw, but no one truly noticed. That's when she noticed the unusual movement near the revolving door. A small girl, maybe 6 years old, with soft blonde curls and strikingly blue eyes, was walking through the lobby barefoot. She wore a light blue dress that matched her eyes and clutched a small teddy bear. Her gaze seemed lost as she moved slowly, looking at the floor. Amy looked around. No adult seemed to be looking for a child. The few guests in the lobby were absorbed in their own concerns. "Hi," Amy said, stepping out from behind the counter and approaching carefully. She crouched down to be at the girl's level. "Is everything okay?" The girl stared at her for a few seconds before answering in a voice so low that Amy had to lean in to hear. "My shoes are gone." Amy smiled. "I see. Do you remember where you last saw them?" The girl hugged the bear tighter and shook her head. "No problem. We can look for them together. My name is Amy. What's yours?" "Chloe," the girl replied, a little louder this time. "It's nice to meet you, Chloe. What kind of pretty shoes were you wearing?" "They're blue, with silver stars." "Shoes with stars? Those must be magic shoes," Amy commented with a smile. "We'll find them." Amy offered her hand, and Chloe, after a moment of hesitation, accepted it. The small hand fit into hers with unexpected trust. Together, they walked through the lobby. Amy didn't rush. She let Chloe set the pace, stopping when the girl wanted to look under an armchair or behind a plant. "How do you work here?" Chloe asked as they inspected behind a sofa. "Yes, at the front desk. I help people find their rooms. And sometimes, I help find magic shoes." This brought a small smile to Chloe's face. It was like seeing the sun shyly peek through the clouds. "My daddy owns this hotel," Chloe said casually. Amy almost stumbled. Matthew Cole. This was Matthew Cole's daughter. The owner of the Sterling Grand was almost a mythical figure to the staff. He appeared rarely, always in brief meetings with managers. He was known for his analytical gaze and direct comments. Amy had seen him a few times from a distance, but had never exchanged more than a good morning with him. "Your dad must be very busy," Amy commented, trying to hide her surprise. "Yes, he's always in meetings. Aunt Laura takes care of me, but she's on the phone right now." Chloe shrugged, as if she were used to this routine. They continued their search, now in the area near the elevator. That's when Amy noticed, in the corner between two armchairs, a small pair of sparkling blue flats. "Look, Chloe, I think we found a treasure." The girl's eyes lit up. Amy picked up the shoes and, instead of just handing them over, knelt in front of Chloe. "May I help you, miss?" Chloe giggled and nodded, extending one foot at a time as Amy gently put on the shoes. "Ready for more adventures," Amy said, fastening the buckle. That's when she noticed the sudden silence around her. She looked up and saw Matthew Cole standing a few feet away, watching the scene. Tall, with blonde hair like his daughter's and more intense blue eyes, he wore an impeccable suit that matched his rigid posture. "Daddy!" Chloe exclaimed, running to him. "Amy found my magic shoes." Matthew picked up his daughter in a smooth motion that seemed rehearsed, but his eyes remained fixed on Amy, who quickly stood up and smoothed her uniform. "Mr. Cole," she greeted, feeling her cheeks burn. Miss Patterson, Amy Patterson. Miss Patterson, he gave a slight nod. Thank you for helping my daughter. It was my pleasure, Amy replied automatically. Matthew studied her for a moment, and Amy had the strange feeling of being evaluated. Then he turned and left, with Chloe waving over his shoulder. Bye, Amy. Bye, Chloe. Take good care of those magic shoes. Amy returned to her post, certain that this small encounter would mean nothing. The days would continue as they always had, polite smiles, automatic greetings, perfect invisibility. 3 days passed without incident. On the morning of the 4th day, Amy was called to the general manager's office, Mr. Harrison. Side to close the door, Patterson, Harrison said as she entered. There was another person in the room, Matthew Cole. Amy felt her stomach drop. Had she made a mistake? Should she not have approached Chloe without permission? Miss Patterson, Matthew began, without preamble. So how long have you been working at the Sterling Grand? 8 years, sir. And always at the front desk? Yes, sir. Matthew exchanged a look with Harrison before continuing. I've reviewed your record. 0 complaints. Dozens of compliments on satisfaction forms. Impeccable punctuality. He paused. Why have you never applied for a promotion? The question caught Amy by surprise. I like my job, sir. Or perhaps no one has truly noticed your potential, Matthew replied, studying her with the same penetrating gaze from the lobby. Amy didn't know what to say. Matthew opened a folder on the table. We are restructuring the team. The position of guest relations manager has been created to oversee the front desk, concierge and guest services. He slid the folder toward her. I want you in that position. Amy blinked, sure she had misheard. I'm sorry, sir. You demonstrated something rare, Miss Patterson. Initiative and genuine kindness. You didn't just follow protocols, you actually cared. He paused. Chloe told me all about her magic shoes and how you didn't rush her, even though you had work to do. She was just a lost child, Amy answered sincerely. Exactly. To you, she wasn't the owner's daughter or an inconvenience. She was just a child who needed help. Matthew stood up. The hotel needs that perspective. It needs someone who sees people, not just guests. Amy took the folder with trembling hands. The contract offered nearly double her current salary. There's an office on the 2nd floor, Harrison added, looking slightly uncomfortable. You'll report directly to Mr. Cole. I accept, Amy said, before she even had time to think. 8 years of waiting to be seen, and finally someone had seen beyond the efficient receptionist. Matthew extended his hand. Welcome to the management team, Miss Patterson. As she shook his hand, Amy felt something different. It wasn't just a new position or a better salary. It was the feeling of finally being noticed, acknowledged, seen for who she truly was. On her way home that day, her steps felt lighter. The world seemed different when you were no longer invisible. The office on the 2nd floor had large windows that let in the morning light. Amy ran her hand over the dark wood desk, still in disbelief. Her name was on the door. Amy Patterson, Guest Relations Manager. The words felt strange, as if they belonged to someone else. The intercom buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. Miss Patterson, the team is gathered in the conference room, informed the voice of Harrison's assistant. Amy took a deep breath, adjusted the new navy blue blazer she had bought especially for the first day, and picked up her notebook. In the mirror beside the door, she saw a woman with blonde hair tied in a neat bun and apprehensive blue eyes. She didn't look like a manager. She just looked like... Amy, you've got this, she murmured to herself before heading out. The conference room was full. 12 faces turned as she entered. Amy recognized everyone, colleagues from the front desk, the head concierge and his team, and a few people from the events department with whom she had worked on special occasions. Good morning, everyone, Amy began, trying to keep her voice steady. Thank you for coming. As you know, I've been appointed to the new position of Guest Relations Manager. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Amy noticed the exchanged glances, the raised eyebrows. Greg Morgan, head concierge for 15 years, crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Congratulations on the position, Amy, said Diana, one of the receptionists. It was unexpected. The comment was loaded with a subtext that Amy caught immediately. Unexpected, unfair, undeserved. Thank you, Diana. I know this is a change for all of us. Amy opened her notebook. I'd like to start by understanding the challenges each department is currently facing. The same as always, Greg commented, looking at his nails. Few resources, many demands, picky guests. Nothing we haven't been dealing with for the last 15 years. The message was clear. What could a 29-year-old receptionist teach him about customer service? Amy felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. That's precisely why we need a new perspective. Mr. Cole wants us to implement some changes in the communication flow between departments. At the mention of Matthew Cole's name, the mood in the room shifted subtly. Amy realized her biggest challenge wouldn't be learning the new duties, but earning the respect of people who saw her only as the receptionist who got lucky. The meeting proceeded for a tense hour. Amy presented her initial ideas, listened to suggestions, few, and veiled criticisms, many, and ended with the promise of individual meetings with each department head the following week. When everyone had left, Amy remained seated, staring at her notes. The page was full of topics, but she felt strangely empty. I thought they'd never leave. The small voice made Amy look up. Chloe was standing at the door wearing a light green dress and the same blue shoes with stars. Her blonde curls were tied in 2 braids. "Chloe, what are you doing here?" Amy smiled, genuinely happy to see a friendly face. The girl entered the room carrying her teddy bear and a colorful little book. "Aunt Laura is talking to the chef about my birthday." She approached the table. "You're on the 2nd floor now." "Yes, I am." Amy put away her notes. "I have a new office. Can I see?" Chloe's blue eyes shone with curiosity. Amy hesitated for only a second. Technically, she should get back to work, review reports, prepare for her meeting with Matthew at the end of the day, but something in Chloe's hopeful face made it impossible to say no. "Of course. Come with me." In the office, Chloe explored every corner with the natural curiosity of a 6-year-old. She touched the leather armchair in the corner, tried out the swivel chair behind the desk, and finally settled on the small sofa by the window. "I like it here," she declared, opening her book. "Can I stay for a little while?" Amy should have said no. She had work to do, a professional image to build. But the girl's quiet presence was strangely comforting after the tension of the meeting. "Yes, you can. I'm just going to organize a few things on my desk, okay?" Chloe nodded and dove into her book, while Amy reviewed the hotel's occupancy reports. Every so often, the girl would look up and smile as if to check if Amy was still there. It was a shy smile, but full of a confidence that Amy didn't fully understand. That afternoon established a pattern that would repeat in the following days. Chloe would appear, silent as a little shadow, sometimes with books, other times just with her bear. She would sit on the sofa or, on more daring days, in the extra chair next to Amy's desk. She didn't talk much, just observed. "Daddy said you're important now," Chloe commented one afternoon as she drew on a notepad Amy had given her. "Your dad said that?" Amy asked. Surprised, Chloe nodded. "He said you see things that other people don't see." Amy felt a strange flutter in her chest, seeing things others didn't. Was that what Matthew thought of her? "Dad, what are you drawing?" Amy changed the subject, trying to ignore the warmth she felt in her cheeks. The hotel. And the people. Chloe remained focused on her drawing. Chloe's presence was a strange contrast to the rest of her days. Outside of that office, Amy faced a constant battle. In the 3rd week, the problems began to arise. First, it was the error in the reservation system. A poorly executed update resulted in an overbooking of 5 executive suites. Amy spent the entire night on the phone, rebooking guests, offering compensation, and listening to complaints that should have been directed at the IT department, but fell on her shoulders. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Donovan," Amy repeated for the 10th time to a furious executive. "We are offering a complimentary additional night on your next visit." "This is the kind of incompetence I didn't expect from the Sterling Grand," the man retorted before hanging up. Every word hit Amy like a small stone. She hadn't created the problem, but now it was her responsibility to solve it. And every failure was seen as proof that she didn't deserve the position. Then came the conflict with Greg. The head concierge simply ignored the new communication protocol implemented by Amy, resulting in failures in the VIP transport service for a group of Japanese executives. "We've worked this way for years, Amy," he said when confronted, not hiding the disdain in using her first name instead of her title. "Maybe you should learn from us before trying to revolutionize everything." The words hit Amy like a punch. She maintained her composure, insisted on compliance with the new rules, but internally doubt grew. Maybe Greg was right. Maybe she was trying to change things that worked fine before her promotion. "It wasn't a suggestion, Mr. Morgan," Amy replied, deliberately using his last name. "It was a directive from Mr. Cole. If you have a problem with it, the three of us can discuss it together." Greg paled slightly. "That won't be necessary." The small victory was momentary. The following week, Diana, the receptionist who had seemed most receptive to the changes, requested a transfer to another hotel in the chain. "It's nothing personal, Amy," she explained, unconvincingly. "Just a better opportunity." Amy knew the truth. Diana was close to Jennifer, the receptionist everyone expected to be promoted instead of Amy. Her departure was a clear sign. Some team members would not accept the new leadership, no matter how hard Amy tried. Between tense meetings and sleepless nights, Chloe's visits became a refuge. The girl appeared almost daily, always at the same time, always with that mix of shyness and determination. "Why do you like to stay here?" Amy asked one afternoon, as Chloe flipped through a picture book on the sofa. The girl looked up, thoughtful. "It's quiet, and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby." Amy smiled. "Well, you're not a baby. You're 6. That's practically a teenager." That got a little giggle out of Chloe. "I'm not a teenager. I don't have pimples." "Oh, so that's what defines a teenager, pimples." "And being grumpy. Aunt Laura says teenagers are always grumpy." Amy laughed, feeling the weight of the day lift a little. It was strange how the presence of this quiet child made everything lighter. Chloe demanded nothing, didn't question Amy's decisions, didn't doubt her ability. The worst incident happened on a Friday. Amy had planned a meeting with Matthew to present the results of the first month, but she woke up to an incomplete report. She worked frantically through the morning, neglecting to check her urgent messages. When she finally arrived at Matthew's office, 10 minutes late, she discovered that he had rescheduled the meeting due to an emergency with an investor. The message had been in her email since 7 in the morning. Mr. Cole had to fly to Chicago, Matthew's assistant informed her, with a look that mixed pity and satisfaction. "He tried to let you know." "I see. When does he return?" "Tomorrow night. But Sunday is his day with his daughter, so the meeting has been rescheduled for Monday at 9. "Thank you, Karen." Amy walked back to her office, feeling the weight of every step. She closed the door, dropped the folder with the report on the desk and sat down, covering her face with her hands. The feeling of failure was overwhelming. The week had been a complete disaster. The overbooking problem was still generating complaints. 3 front desk employees had been written up for errors in the new procedures, and now she had wasted hours preparing a presentation for a meeting that wouldn't happen. For the first time since her promotion, Amy allowed herself to question if she really deserved the job. Maybe Matthew had made a mistake. Maybe she was just an efficient receptionist who should have stayed where she was. "He had to go," said a familiar voice. Amy looked up, surprised. Chloe was sitting on the sofa, apparently having been settled in for some time with her colored pencils and paper. "Chloe, I didn't hear you come in." "The door was open," the girl explained, getting up and walking to the desk. "Daddy had to go to Chicago. It's far from here." Amy tried to smile. "Yes, it is far. He'll be back tomorrow. He said he's bringing me a present." Chloe stopped beside Amy's chair and studied her with those perceptive blue eyes. "You look sad." "I'm just tired." Amy straightened up in her chair, feeling she needed to be strong in front of the child. "Being a grown-up is tiring sometimes. Starting over is more tiring," Chloe replied with a wisdom that caught Amy by surprise. "Daddy always says that." "Your dad is a smart man." Chloe looked at the report folder. "What's that?" Some work I did to show your dad, but now it will have to wait. Can I see? Amy hesitated, but opened the folder. There was nothing confidential in it, just charts and customer satisfaction analyses. Chloe looked for a few minutes, her small fingers tracing the colorful pages. There are a lot of numbers, she finally commented. Yes, a lot of numbers, Amy agreed with a small smile. Numbers are hard. At school, I'm learning to count to 100. And how is that going? Fine, Chloe shrugged, but I'd rather draw. She looked at Amy curiously. How'd you like your new job? The question, so direct and innocent, caught Amy off guard. Did she like it? Between the conflicts, the doubts, and the sleepless nights, there were moments, rare but real, when she felt she was making a difference. When a guest smiled gratefully, when an idea worked, when she saw the potential to make things better. Yes, I do, she answered honestly, even when it's hard. Chloe seemed satisfied with the answer. Can I draw while you work? That was exactly what Amy should be doing. Working, revising the report, preparing better for the next opportunity. But the prospect of being alone with her negative thoughts was depressing. Of course, Chloe. You can use the sofa. The hours passed. Amy revised the report, answered emails, and took a few calls, while Chloe drew in silence. There was something comforting in that childish presence, as if the girl, without saying anything, was saying everything. Occasionally, Chloe would look up from her drawing and watch Amy work. There was no judgment in that gaze, just a genuine curiosity and an acceptance that Amy rarely found in adults. What do you do when things get hard? Amy asked at one point, surprising herself with the question. Chloe thought for a few seconds. I take a deep breath like Daddy taught me. And I remember that tomorrow is another day. The simplicity of the answer made Amy smile. That's very wise, you know. Aunt Laura says, I'm an old soul in a child's body. Chloe made a face. Is that good or bad? It's good. It means you're smart. Near quitting time, Laura, Chloe's nanny, appeared at the door. Chloe, I've been looking all over for you. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry, Miss Patterson. I hope she wasn't a bother. Not at all, Amy replied sincerely. She was good company. Laura held out her hand. Come on, Chloe. It's time for dinner. Chloe gathered her drawings but left one on Amy's desk. Sure, this one's for you, she said, before following Laura out of the office. Amy looked at the drawing, a figure with yellow hair and a huge smile, surrounded by colorful stars. It was simple, but there was something special about the way the figure seemed to be shining. She smiled and put it in her drawer, promising herself she would buy a frame for it over the weekend. It was past 8 when Amy finally shut down her computer. It had been a difficult week, and the feeling of inadequacy still weighed on her. As she organized her desk to leave, she noticed a small folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. It seemed to have slipped from somewhere. Curious, Amy unfolded it. The handwriting was childish, in bright blue pencil, but the message struck her heart like an arrow. You're good at this. I see it. The tears came without warning. Amy held the note carefully, as if it were something precious and fragile. In a week of doubts and criticism, those simple words written by a 6-year-old child were exactly what she needed to hear. With slightly trembling hands, Amy opened her planner and placed the note on the first page. She closed the book and held it to her chest for a moment. On her way home, Amy thought of all the reasons to give up. The team's resistance, the mistakes made, the constant doubts. But that little note weighed more than all of it. She wasn't just doing this for herself now. She was doing it because, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, a little person with starry shoes believed in her, and maybe that was reason enough to keep going. The email arrived at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon as Amy was finishing her weekly reports. Matthew Cole's name in her inbox made her stomach do a little flip. Miss Patterson, I would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night. Nothing work-related, just a thank you for your excellent performance these first few months. Chloe has insisted on your presence. If you are available, we can meet at Le Jardin at 7 p.m. It's a family-friendly restaurant, but with a pleasant atmosphere. I await your response. Matthew Cole. Amy read the message 3 times, trying to understand what was implied. A dinner with her boss and his daughter. It definitely wasn't a date, but it wasn't a work meeting either. What was it then? Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Declining would be simpler, safer, but the mention of Chloe made her smile. In recent weeks, the girl had become a constant presence in her office, a small, silent companion who brought drawings, curious questions, and that unconditional acceptance that only children can offer. "Mr. Cole, thank you for the invitation. I'd be delighted to accept. I'll meet you at Le Jardin at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Amy Patterson." Short, professional, not too enthusiastic. Amy reread it before sending, took a deep breath and went back to work. But her mind kept returning to the email. What should she wear? What would they talk about? Why now, after almost 3 months in which Matthew had barely been at the hotel? On Saturday, Amy spent more time getting ready than she'd like to admit. She opted for a simple but elegant light blue dress with a light coat over it. Nothing too formal, nothing too casual, the kind of outfit that revealed nothing about her expectations for the evening. Le Jardin was just a few blocks from the hotel, a French restaurant known for its cozy atmosphere and decor that blended an indoor garden with tables set among plants and small fountains. When Amy arrived, punctually at 7, Matthew and Chloe were already there. They made an interesting contrast. Matthew in an impeccable grey suit, his usual serious expression, and Chloe beside him, wearing a floral dress and waving excitedly as soon as she saw Amy. "You came!" the girl exclaimed, as if there had been any doubt. "Of course I came," Amy smiled, crouching down to Chloe's level. "You look beautiful in that dress. Daddy said I could pick any outfit," Chloe explained, twirling to show off the dress. "I chose flowers because they match the restaurant's name." "A very smart choice," Amy agreed, standing up to greet Matthew. "Miss Patterson," he extended his hand. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." "Please call me Amy," she replied, shaking the offered hand. "We're outside the hotel after all." A small smile, so brief Amy almost missed it, crossed Matthew's lips. "Amy, then. And you can call me Matthew." The maitre d' led them to a table in the corner of the indoor garden, partially secluded by a trellis covered in jasmine. Chloe made a point of sitting next to Amy, leaving Matthew on the other side of the round table. "I chose this place because Chloe likes the garden," Matthew explained as he looked at the menu. "And because they serve the best chocolate soufflé in the city. It's my favorite dessert," Chloe added. "Do you like chocolate, Amy?" "Who doesn't?" Amy smiled. The start of the dinner was marked by light conversation, mostly led by Chloe, who seemed determined to fill any uncomfortable silence. She talked about her school, the books she was reading, and the teddy bear she had left at home because dinners are for big people. Amy noticed, watching the two of them, how different Matthew was with his daughter. The usual rigidity in his gestures was gone, as was the calculated coldness in his eyes. When Chloe spoke, he listened with genuine attention, as if every childish observation were precious information. It was only after the waiter served the main courses that Matthew finally addressed the real reason for the dinner. "Amy, I invited you today because I want to thank you personally," he said, setting his silverware aside. "Some of the reports don't show everything, but I've been receiving exceptional feedback about the changes implemented under your management." Amy felt her cheeks flush. "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing more than that." Matthew maintained his formal tone, but there was something different in his voice, a sincerity Amy rarely heard in the workplace. "Twice when I created the position, I had high expectations. You've exceeded them." "Did the magic shoes work?" Chloe asked suddenly, looking from Amy to her father with curiosity. Matthew laughed, a sound that caught Amy by surprise with its rarity. "In a way, yes. The magic shoes brought good luck to all of us." "I knew it," Chloe declared triumphantly, returning to her plate of pasta. "The hotel was different before you took over management," Matthew continued, turning his attention back to Amy. "Efficient, yes, profitable, without a doubt. But it was missing something I couldn't quite pinpoint." "And what changed?" Amy asked, genuinely curious. Matthew paused, as if carefully weighing his words. People smile more, both employees and guests. It seems like a small detail, but it makes all the difference in the atmosphere. That observation surprised Amy. She had focused so much on numbers, procedures, and efficiency that she hadn't noticed the more subtle changes in the environment. But he was right. The climate at the hotel had changed. The employees who initially resisted were beginning to accept the new ideas. Guests were noticing the difference in service. "Thank you," Amy replied simply. "That means a lot to hear." The dinner proceeded with an unexpected lightness. Matthew spoke about the network's expansion plans, about how he had inherited the first hotel from his father and built the rest with hard work. He wasn't just the distant, demanding owner everyone knew. He was a man who cared deeply about what he had created. Chloe, now more at ease, began to share stories about her routine with her father. "Daddy always reads 2 stories before bed," she told Amy, "even when he's very tired, and he does different voices for each character." Matthew seemed slightly embarrassed. "I'm just fulfilling my fatherly duties." "You do voices for the characters." Amy couldn't hide her surprise, trying to imagine the serious and restrained Matthew Cole playing characters from children's tales. "I have a particular talent for dragons and bears," he admitted with a half-smile. "But that's a corporate secret that must not leave this table." Amy laughed, and for the first time she felt she was seeing the man behind the title, not just Mr. Cole, the hotel owner, but Matthew, a dedicated father who read stories with different voices and knew his daughter's favorite dessert. When the chocolate souffle arrived, Chloe's eyes lit up. The conversation dwindled as they all enjoyed the dessert. Amy noticed how Matthew watched his daughter with a look that mixed adoration and something else, perhaps a touch of melancholy. The restaurant was almost empty when they finished dessert. Chloe, after a long day and a full meal, began to show signs of fatigue. Her blue eyes struggled to stay open. "So I think someone's ready for bed," Amy commented softly. "I'm not sleepy," Chloe protested, but a yawn betrayed her words. Matthew called the waiter for the check. "We should go. It's past her bedtime." While they waited, Chloe slipped from her chair and came to Amy's side, resting her head on her shoulder. The gesture, so natural and trusting, warmed Amy's heart. Without thinking, she put her arm around the girl's shoulders. "You smell nice," Chloe murmured sleepily. "Like flowers and books." Amy smiled. "Flowers and books. That's an interesting combination." "They're 2 good things," the girl explained with the simple logic of childhood. When they left the restaurant, Chloe was practically asleep on her feet. Matthew bent down to pick her up, but the girl clung to Amy's hand. "I want Amy to carry me," she murmured, her eyes already closed. Matthew looked at Amy, a silent question on his face. Amy nodded and gently lifted Chloe into her arms. The girl immediately nestled against her, her face resting in the curve of her neck. "So I live 2 blocks from here," Matthew said quietly as they walked. "If it's not too much trouble—" "No problem," Amy replied, adjusting Chloe in her arms. They walked in silence through the lit streets. Amy felt the warm weight of Chloe against her chest, her soft breathing indicating that the girl had fallen completely asleep. It was a strange feeling, an unexpected intimacy, a kind of trust that isn't earned with words. Matthew walked beside her, occasionally glancing at his daughter. There was something in those glances that Amy couldn't decipher, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability she had never seen on her boss's always controlled face. The apartment was on the top floor of an elegant building. When they entered, Amy immediately noticed how the place reflected Matthew's personality, organized, sophisticated, but with colorful touches that could only have come from Chloe. Framed children's drawings on the walls, a collection of children's books neatly arranged on a shelf, small toys stored in colorful baskets. "Her room is this way," Matthew whispered, guiding Amy down a hallway. Chloe's room was a charming contrast to the rest of the apartment. Soft yellow walls, a white canopy bed, shelves full of stuffed animals. Matthew pulled back the covers, while Amy gently placed the girl in bed. Chloe murmured something unintelligible as Amy tried to pull away, her small hand tightly gripping the sleeve of Amy's coat. "Stay a little longer," the girl asked sleepily. "Just until I fall asleep." Amy looked at Matthew, who gave a slight nod. Make yourself comfortable. I'll make some tea in the meantime." Amy sat on the edge of the bed, gently stroking Chloe's blonde hair. The girl smiled without opening her eyes. "Good night, best friend," she murmured, before falling into a deep sleep. The words caught Amy by surprise. Best friend? Was that how Chloe saw her? The idea caused a wave of emotion that Amy hadn't expected to feel. When she was sure Chloe was sound asleep, Amy carefully stood up and left the room, leaving the door ajar. She found Matthew in the kitchen, 2 cups of tea on the counter. "She's asleep," Amy informed him, accepting the offered cup. Matthew nodded. "She trusts you." It wasn't a question, but a statement. "Chloe is a special child," Amy replied. "Very perceptive for her age." "Yes, she is." Matthew took a sip of tea before continuing. "She doesn't connect easily with people. It's never been like that, until you came along." Amy didn't know what to say. The dinner, the walk to the apartment, being there in the kitchen drinking tea, it all seemed to have crossed some invisible line between professional and personal. "She called me best friend," Amy commented finally. A soft smile appeared on Matthew's face. "I know. She's been talking about it for weeks. Amy is my best friend. Can I show this to my best friend?" It's the first time I've heard her use that term. They stood in silence for a few moments, just drinking their tea. It was a comfortable silence, without the tension that usually existed between them in the workplace. "Thank you," Matthew said finally. "Not just for the work at the hotel, but for this, for being important to her." "You don't have to thank me. She's important to me, too." When Amy left the apartment a little later, something had changed. She wasn't just the guest relations manager leaving a dinner with her boss. She was Amy, leaving Matthew and Chloe's home, carrying with her the responsibility of being a 6-year-old girl's best friend, and all that it entailed. In the days that followed, Chloe's presence in Amy's life intensified. The girl no longer confined herself to the office. She would appear in the lobby when Amy was in meetings there, wait for her during coffee breaks, and create small opportunities for encounters throughout the hotel. Laura, the nanny, seemed to have given up trying to keep Chloe away from Amy. "Joe, she talks about you all the time," she confided once. "I've never seen her so attached to someone." One particularly hectic afternoon, Amy was in her office organizing papers for an important presentation. Chloe was sitting in the extra chair, drawing intently, when she suddenly looked up. "Amy? You get me, don't you?" The question, so simple and direct, made Amy stop what she was doing and look at the girl. Chloe's blue eyes were fixed on her, with a seriousness unusual for someone so young. "I think so, Chloe." "Why?" Chloe shrugged, returning to her drawing. "Some people don't get it. They think I'm weird because I'm quiet. Or they talk to me like I'm a baby." Amy set her papers aside and swiveled her chair to face Chloe. "I've never thought you were weird. I just think you observe a lot before you speak. And that's a very special quality." A smile lit up the girl's face. She reached out and held Amy's hand. "You get me, don't you?" she repeated, more of a statement than a question this time. Amy gently squeezed the little hand in hers. "Yes, I get you." Their gazes met. The child's full of trust, the adult's full of an affection that grew with each passing day. In that moment, Amy knew something important had formed between them, a connection that went beyond casual encounters or friendly chats. "We're real best friends now," Chloe declared solemnly. Amy smiled, feeling a strange mix of joy and responsibility. "Yes, we are best friends." And so, between reports and drawings, meetings and children's stories, Amy Patterson, the former invisible receptionist, became Chloe Cole's best friend, a title that somehow felt more important than any position at the hotel. The rain drummed against the windows of Amy's office, creating a soft melody that contrasted with the fast pace of the hotel. It was one of those spring afternoons when the sky suddenly darkens, turning midday into twilight. Amy was reviewing the last quarter's reports, pleased with the numbers. 6 months as guest relations manager had transformed not only the department, but also her own confidence. The initial resistance from the team had gradually dissolved, replaced by genuine respect. Even Greg, the head concierge who had challenged her so much at the beginning, now sought her opinion on important matters. A light knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Only one person knocked like that. 3 quick taps followed by an expectant pause. "Come in, Chloe," Amy called, smiling in anticipation. The door opened, and Chloe entered, shaking her pink umbrella. She wore a yellow raincoat over her school uniform and rubber boots with frog patterns. Her blonde curls were a little damp at the ends. "It's raining a lot," the girl announced the obvious, with the adorable seriousness she often assumed. "I noticed," Amy replied, getting up to help her with the wet coat. "Did you come straight from school?" Chloe nodded as Amy hung the coat on the coat rack near the door. "Aunt Laura picked me up, but Daddy's in a meeting here. He said I could stay with you if you weren't busy." "For you, I'm never too busy." That was a little white lie. In truth, Amy had a list of tasks that needed to be completed by the end of the day, but Chloe's presence had become so natural in her routine that she couldn't imagine saying no to the girl. Chloe settled into her usual spot, the small sofa by the window that Amy had repositioned especially for her. From her backpack, she took out a drawing pad and a box of well-used colored pencils. "What are you doing?" she asked, looking at Amy's computer screen. "Boring numbers," Amy replied with a theatrical sigh. "So counting how many people stayed at the hotel in the last 3 months. A lot. More than last year. That's a good thing." Chloe absorbed the information with a nod, as if she perfectly understood the importance of that data for the business. It was one of the things Amy admired most about her, that ability to seem to understand complex things, or at least to respect their importance. For a few minutes, they worked in silence, each at her own task. Amy with her reports, Chloe with her drawing. The sound of the rain and the occasional scrape of a pencil on paper created a cozy atmosphere, like a small bubble of calm amidst the hotel's hustle and bustle. "Amy," Chloe broke the silence, without looking up from her notebook. "Yes, this part of the hotel is my favorite." Amy swiveled her chair to get a better look at the girl. "This part? You mean my office?" Chloe shook her head thoughtfully. "Not just the office, it's this part where you are." The simplicity of the statement touched Amy in an unexpected way. Before she could respond, Chloe stood up and came to her desk, carrying the drawing pad. "I'm finished. This is for you." Amy took the drawing carefully. It was a colorful illustration of 2 figures holding hands, one adult and one child, both blonde, in front of a large building that Amy recognized as a simplified version of the hotel. Small details revealed the care taken: stars on the smaller figure's shoes, an ID badge on the larger figure, colorful flowers all around. "That's me," Chloe explained, pointing to the smaller figure. "That's you." Amy felt a lump in her throat. There was something so pure, so unpretentious in that gesture, that words seemed inadequate. Instead of speaking, she got up and walked to the magnetic board on the wall where she used to pin important notes. "I'll put it here," she said, choosing a colorful magnet to hold the drawing, "so I can see it every day." Chloe's smile lit up her whole face. Amy returned to her chair, but something had changed. Looking at the drawing on the wall, at the girl who was now quietly returning to the sofa, Amy was struck by a sudden understanding. This wasn't just a casual friendship with her boss's daughter. It wasn't an accident or a temporary situation. It was something real, something that was transforming her life in ways she was only beginning to understand. For years, Amy had existed in a controlled comfort zone, competent, invisible, safe. Even the promotion had been just a professional change. But this connection with Chloe, and by extension, the new dynamic with Matthew, was redrawing the contours of her world. "Did you know there's going to be a party here at the hotel?" Chloe asked, interrupting her thoughts. "A party? Oh, you mean the employee event next week?" Chloe nodded enthusiastically. "Daddy said there will be music and food and special decorations." Amy smiled. The event Chloe mentioned was her latest initiative, an internal celebration to mark the hotel's 5th anniversary. Traditionally, these dates were only commemorated with a formal email from management, but Amy had proposed something different, a real party for all employees, with their families invited. "It's going to be fun," Amy confirmed. "We're preparing everything with a lot of care." "Can I help?" Chloe's blue eyes sparkled with anticipation. Amy hesitated for only a moment. Technically, The event was a serious work matter, not a game. But Chloe's genuine enthusiasm was irresistible. Of course you can. In fact, I really need someone with good taste to help me choose a few things. In the days that followed, Chloe became an unofficial assistant for the event. While Amy coordinated with vendors and adjusted the budget, Chloe gave her opinions on colors, music, and especially the sweets that would be served. Her selection criterion was simple. If it makes us smile, it's good. To Amy's surprise, the childish logic worked perfectly. Chloe's choices, from the colorful tablecloths to the small favors for each guest, brought a touch of joy that Amy, with all her professional efficiency, might have overlooked. The day of the event arrived with the sun shining after a week of rain. The hotel's ballroom, normally reserved for business conferences, had been transformed. Delicate lights hung from the ceiling. Round tables with simple but elegant centerpieces were strategically arranged, and a small stage for the band had been set up in the corner. "It's perfect," Chloe declared solemnly during the final inspection, hours before the guests arrived. Dressed especially for the occasion in a royal blue dress and her inseparable starry shoes, she walked beside Amy, checking every detail like a little supervisor. When the first guests began to arrive, hotel employees accompanied by spouses, children, some even with elderly parents, Amy felt a knot in her stomach. This wasn't an event for guests, it was something more personal. If it failed, it wouldn't just be a professional mistake, but something that would affect the morale of the entire team. "It's going to be okay," Chloe whispered, somehow sensing her apprehension. "You're good at this, remember?" Amy smiled, touched by the reference to the note she had kept in her planner for months. "We're good at this," she corrected, lightly squeezing the girl's hand. To Amy's relief, the event flowed naturally. The employees, initially shy, soon relaxed. Children ran between the tables, couples danced to the music of the small band, and groups formed in lively conversations. There was an atmosphere of genuine camaraderie that Amy had rarely seen in the formal environment of the hotel. What surprised her most was seeing how the hierarchical barriers seemed to temporarily dissolve. Greg, always so formal, was laughing loudly as his wife told a story. Jennifer, the receptionist who had initially resented Amy's promotion, came to thank her personally for the initiative. "We've never had anything like this before," she commented. "It reminds us that we're more than just employees." Around 9 o'clock, when the party was in full swing, Amy noticed Matthew discreetly entering the ballroom. He had mentioned he might not be able to attend due to a video conference with investors. Seeing him there, in a less formal suit than usual, brought an unexpected wave of joy. Chloe, who had spent the last half hour drawing with the children of other employees, spotted her father immediately and ran towards him. Matthew picked her up with a smile that Amy rarely saw in the workplace. "You came," Chloe exclaimed. "Now the party is complete." Matthew walked over to Amy, still carrying Chloe. "Impressive," he commented, observing the room. "Truly impressive." "Thank you," Amy replied. "I had a great helper." "The best helper," Chloe corrected, making both adults smile. Matthew looked around, noticing the groups of employees interacting with a naturalness that contrasted with the normally formal hotel environment. "You gave this place a soul," he said quietly, just for Amy to hear. Before Amy could respond, Chloe intervened. "We did it, me and my best friend." The statement, so simple and true, made Matthew laugh. "Of course, it was you two, forgive my mistake." For a moment, the three of them stood there, observing the celebration they had created together. It wasn't just a successful corporate event, it was the tangible result of a new energy that had permeated the hotel since Amy took over management and, perhaps more importantly, since Chloe had started filling the halls with her presence. Later, as the party began to wind down and some guests were already saying their goodbyes, Amy found a moment of quiet. Leaning against a discreet column, she watched the ballroom with a satisfaction that went beyond professional pride. 6 months ago, she was just an efficient and invisible receptionist. Now, she was at the center of a transformation that affected not only her career but the entire environment around her. And at the center of that transformation was a 6-year-old girl who had believed in her when not even she believed in herself. Amy watched Chloe, who was now proudly showing her drawings to a group of attentive adults. The naturalness with which the girl navigated among people of all ages, the quiet confidence she emanated, it was inspiring. What had started as a professional opportunity had turned into something much deeper. It was no longer just about reports, efficiency, or promotions. It was about real connections, about making a difference in people's lives, especially in the life of that little person with starry shoes who was now running towards her. Amy, Mr. Philip said I draw better than his daughter. And she's 10, Chloe announced triumphantly. Amy laughed, crouching down to be at the girl's eye level. That's because you have a special imagination. Chloe smiled, that pure smile that always reached her eyes. You do too. That's why we're best friends. In that moment, looking at Chloe's happy face at the lively atmosphere around them, Amy understood with clear certainty this was no longer just work. It was a bond with Chloe, with the people around her, with a place that had become much more than a job. It was a place that had no name, but that she recognized perfectly, a place of belonging. The rain was falling hard when Amy finished her meeting with the concierge team. It was past 9 at night, and the hotel was relatively quiet, just the normal movement of guests returning from dinner or heading out to enjoy the city's nightlife. She organized the documents in her folder, satisfied with the results. She had finally earned the respect of Greg and his team, something that had seemed impossible a few months ago. The transformation in the work environment was palpable, from a place of silent competition to one of genuine collaboration. As she walked down the hall toward the elevators, Amy saw a familiar figure approaching, Matthew Cole in his usual impeccable suit, despite the late hour. Miss Patterson, he greeted formally, still using her last name when they were in a professional setting. Working late again? Meeting with the concierge team, Amy explained. And you? I thought you were in Seattle this week. I came back early. Some matters required my presence here. They entered the elevator together. Amy pressed the button for the ground floor, while Matthew selected the basement where the private parking was located. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it carried a strange electricity. In the last few months, since the dinner at Le Jardin, something had changed in the dynamic between them. It wasn't just professional respect, nor just the connection through Chloe. It was something more subtle, unspoken, that lingered in the spaces between their formal conversations. The elevator began to descend, passing the 5th floor, then the 4th. That's when it happened, a flicker of the lights, followed by complete darkness. The elevator shuddered and stopped abruptly. What was that? Amy asked, instinctively grabbing the handrail. Before Matthew could answer, the emergency lights came on, bathing the car in a soft blue glow. Power outage, Matthew answered calmly. The generator should kick in any minute. Amy nodded, trying to ignore the claustrophobic feeling that was starting to build. She had never liked enclosed spaces, and being stuck in an elevator was not on her list of desirable experiences. Matthew noticed her unease. Are you okay? You seem tense. Small spaces aren't exactly my favorite environment, Amy admitted, trying to smile. I understand. Matthew picked up the elevator's emergency phone. I'll check how long we'll be here. After a brief conversation, he placed the receiver back on the hook. Apparently, lightning struck a nearby transformer. The generator is running, but they need to restart the elevator system manually. Estimated 10 to 15 minutes. Amy took a deep breath, seeking calm. Well, I've been through worse. Like what? Matthew asked, clearly trying to distract her. I once got stuck in a portable toilet during a music festival, Amy replied, laughing at the memory. Believe me, this is a luxury in comparison. Matthew smiled, a genuine smile he rarely showed in the workplace. That definitely sounds worse. The silence returned, but it was different this time. Without the distractions of the hotel, without the formality of meetings, without the mediating presence of Chloe, they were just two people in a small space, forced to truly see each other. You've transformed this place, Matthew said suddenly, breaking the silence. I'm not just talking about the numbers, although they're impressive too. Amy felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected compliment. I just did my job. No, you did much more. Matthew studied her intently. You brought something that was missing here, a kind of humanity. It's funny, Amy replied after a moment. For years, I worked in this hotel feeling completely invisible, like I was just a replaceable gear in the machine. You were never invisible, Matthew said softly. We just weren't looking properly. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Amy. Perhaps it was the forced intimacy of the confined space, or the blue light that softened the edges of reality. But she suddenly felt an inexplicable urge to share something she had kept hidden for years. Did you know I was almost married once? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Matthew looked surprised. No, I didn't know. Amy leaned against the elevator wall, her eyes fixed on an invisible point. I was 24. We had been together since college. We had plans, a date set, even an apartment picked out. What happened? I got pregnant, Amy said, her voice softer now. It wasn't planned, but we were happy. We started planning a nursery, choosing names. She paused, taking a deep breath. I lost the baby in the 4th month. It was devastating. Not just the loss, but what came after. Something broke between us. We tried to fix it, but we couldn't. Matthew looked at her with an intensity Amy had never seen before. I'm so sorry. The strangest part was what happened to me afterward, Amy continued. It was like I froze emotionally. I threw myself into work, built a perfect and predictable routine. I smiled at guests, did my job impeccably, went home, slept, and repeated it all the next day. Years went by like that. Until a little girl lost her magic shoes, Matthew completed softly. Amy smiled, surprised by his insight. Yes, until a little girl lost her magic shoes. The elevator remained motionless, as if time had also paused to allow for this conversation. I can understand that freezing, Matthew said after a moment. It happens differently to everyone, but the mechanism is the same. Something in his voice made Amy realize it wasn't just empathy, it was personal experience. You too. Matthew adjusted his tie, a gesture Amy recognized as a sign of rarely shown nervousness. I lost my wife during Chloe's birth, he said at last, the words coming out with difficulty. Sudden complications. One moment we were planning our life as a family, the next, it was just me and a newborn baby. Amy felt a lump in her throat. Matthew, I didn't know. Few people know the details. He ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture for someone always so composed. Since that day, it's just been the two of us. I tried to create a perfect structure, but she needed something I didn't know how to give. The admission, so honest and raw, created an instant connection between them, a mutual recognition of losses that redefine lives. You gave her everything you could, Amy said with conviction. Chloe is an incredible child, smart, sensitive, curious. That doesn't happen by accident. I did the best I could, Matthew agreed. But there are things that a single father, especially one as focused on work as I am, simply can't perceive. The emotional needs, the small details that make a difference. Is that why you promoted me? Amy asked, a doubt that had always existed finally finding a voice. First because you realized Chloe connected with me. Matthew reflected for a moment. No, I promoted you because you were the right person for the job. Your ability was evident in the reports, in the guest comments, in the way you handled difficult situations. He paused. But yes, seeing you with Chloe that day, it made me see something in you that I might not have noticed otherwise, a genuine kindness that can't be taught or trained. They were silent for a few moments, digesting the shared revelations. There was a strange intimacy in being there, suspended between floors, isolated from the outside world. You know what's funny? Amy said finally. How loss can freeze us. But it can also eventually open us up to new possibilities. Matthew looked at her with an intensity that made Amy look away. Yes, sometimes we need to break before we can rebuild ourselves in ways we never imagined. The main lights flickered and came back on, and the elevator shuddered gently before resuming its descent. The moment of shared vulnerability was ending, but something had irrevocably changed between them. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Amy hesitated before stepping out. Thank you, she said simply. For what? Matthew asked. For trusting me. For sharing your story. Matthew nodded, his professional mask gradually returning to place, but his eyes remained different, softer, more approachable. Good night, Amy. Good night, Matthew. As Amy walked out of the hotel into the rain that was now falling more softly, she felt a strange lightness. In a few minutes stuck in an elevator, they had shared more than in months of meetings and professional interactions. There, in that confined space between floors, a deep understanding had been born between them, a mutual recognition of pain, loss, and hope that transcended the relationship of boss and employee. And somehow, that changed everything. The call came shortly after 7 in the morning, as Amy was getting ready to leave home. Matthew's name on the caller ID surprised her. Since their conversation in the elevator 3 days ago, they had maintained a polite distance, as if both needed time to process the shared revelations. Amy? His voice sounded different, an unusual tension replacing his usually controlled tone. Sorry to call so early. No problem. Is something wrong? It's Chloe. Matthew paused briefly. She's sick. High fever during the night. Sore throat. The doctor came and said it's just a virus, nothing serious, but... Is she okay? Amy interrupted, her concern immediate. Physically, she will be. But she's being... He seemed to be searching for the right words. Difficult. She won't take her medicine, won't eat anything. Laura is trying to help, but Chloe is only asking for you. Amy felt a wave of emotion rush through her. For me. She insists that only you know how to make the tea the right way, and that she needs to show you something important. Matthew let out a tired sigh. I know it's an inappropriate request. You have responsibilities at the hotel, meetings. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Amy replied without hesitation. The relief in Matthew's voice was palpable. Thank you. I really mean it. Thank you. During the drive to Matthew's apartment, Amy mentally rearranged her schedule. She had an important meeting with the events team at 10, another with suppliers in the afternoon, nothing that couldn't be delegated or rescheduled. Laura opened the door, her face showing exhaustion. She had a rough night, the nanny explained as she led Amy down the hall. She barely slept, and she doesn't want to eat. The fever. It's down a little with the fever reducer, but the doctor said it might come back. The most important thing is to keep her hydrated. They stopped at Chloe's bedroom door. Matthew was sitting on the edge of the bed, gently stroking his daughter's hair. When Amy entered, the girl's eyes, bright with fever, lit up for a moment. Amy, her voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. Hi, sweetie. Amy approached, sitting on the other side of the bed. I hear you're not feeling very well today. Chloe shook her head. My throat hurts. And I'm hot and cold at the same time. Matthew stood up, a mix of concern and relief on his face. She refused her medicine an hour ago. Maybe you'll have better luck. Let's give it a try, Amy said, taking off her coat and placing her bag on a nearby chair. It was strange to be there in their private space, not as a visitor at a formal dinner, but as someone called in a moment of need. When Matthew and Laura left the room, Amy turned her full attention to Chloe. The girl's face was pale, except for her fever-flushed cheeks. Her blonde hair was messy, and she was clutching her favorite teddy bear to her chest. So, Amy began softly, I hear you're refusing your medicine. It's gross, Chloe murmured. Bitter. I see. Amy picked up the bottle from the nightstand. What if we make a deal? You take the medicine, and then we'll make that special tea you like. What do you think? Chloe considered the proposal, her blue eyes studying Amy with that peculiar seriousness that seemed beyond her 6 years. You make it the right way, she said finally, with honey and cinnamon on top. Exactly that way. To Amy's relief, Chloe took the medicine, making an adorable face as she swallowed the pink liquid. Laura appeared at the door, watching the scene with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. I'll go make the tea, Amy said, standing up. You're not leaving, are you? Chloe asked, a touch of anxiety in her weak voice. No, I'm just going to the kitchen. I'll be back in 5 minutes, I promise. In the kitchen, Amy found Matthew on the phone, apparently handling some hotel business. He watched her prepare the tea, hot water, a spoonful of honey, a sprinkle of cinnamon on top, with an unreadable expression. When he finished his call, he approached her. She took the medicine. Amy nodded. Without much resistance. Kids often behave better for people who aren't family. It's not that, Matthew said, lowering his voice. Since she got sick yesterday, Chloe has been asking for you. Not just this morning, all through the night. I want Amy. Amy knows how to make it better. Amy didn't know what to say. The idea that Chloe specifically wanted her, in a moment of vulnerability, touched something deep inside her. I'll stay with her today, she said simply. I've already rearranged my schedule. The relief on Matthew's face was evident. Thank you. I have a meeting I can't postpone, but I'll be back in the early afternoon. Don't worry. We'll be fine. And so began a day unlike any other in Amy's life. It wasn't the day of a hotel manager, nor of a friend on a casual visit. It was the day of someone who cares, who comforts, who becomes a safe harbor. She returned to the room with the tea and found Chloe flipping through a storybook. Can you read to me? The girl asked, her voice still hoarse. Of course. Which story do you want? Chloe pointed to a page with an illustration of a small bear. This one. It's about a bear who lost his family, but then finds a new home. Amy settled beside the girl on the bed and began to read. The story was simple but touching. A bear cub separated from his parents during a storm, finding shelter with a family of badgers who welcome him as one of their own. When she finished reading, Chloe was quiet, thoughtful. Sometimes you find family in places you don't expect, right? She commented with that wisdom that always surprised Amy. Yes, sometimes we do. The hours passed in a quiet routine. Amy helped Chloe take a bath, changed the sweat-damp sheets for clean, fresh ones, and prepared a light soup that the girl managed to eat in small spoonfuls. Between activities, they read stories, talked in soft tones, or simply sat in comfortable silence. In the early afternoon, the fever returned. Amy applied cool compresses to Chloe's forehead, murmuring words of comfort as the girl tossed uncomfortably. It hurts, Chloe murmured, her eyes closed. I know, sweetie. It'll be over soon, I promise. When the fever reducer finally took effect, Chloe fell asleep, exhausted. Amy stayed by her side, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the blonde curls spread across the pillow. It was strange how, in just a few months, this little person had become so important in her life. She wasn't just the boss's daughter, or an adorable child who showed up at her office. She was Chloe, unique, special, someone for whom Amy felt a love she didn't know she was capable of feeling again. When Chloe woke up hours later, the fever had broken. Her cheeks were less flushed, and her eyes were more alert. You were here the whole time, she asked, her voice still hoarse but stronger. Of course I was. I promised, didn't I? Chloe smiled faintly, reaching out to hold Amy's hand. Thank you for taking care of me. I feel happy when you're here. The simplicity of the declaration, the purity of the expressed feeling, made Amy's eyes well up with unshed tears. Before she could respond, she noticed a movement at the door. Matthew was standing there, watching the scene in silence. For how long, Amy couldn't say. Their eyes met briefly, long enough for Amy to see something change in his expression. It wasn't just gratitude or relief at seeing his daughter better. It was a deeper understanding, a recognition of what had happened without anyone planning it. He said nothing, just gave a slight nod before stepping away. But Amy understood the silent message. Matthew Cole, the man who had built his life around autonomy and control, was finally accepting an undeniable truth. Amy Patterson was no longer just a competent employee or an occasional friend to his daughter. She had become essential. The email arrived on an ordinary Thursday, among dozens of others in Amy's inbox. The sender immediately caught her attention, Victoria Laurent, Director of Operations for Ellison Hotels. Amy opened the message out of curiosity, expecting some kind of partnership proposal. What she found left her momentarily breathless. We have been impressed with the results you have achieved at the Sterling Grand Hotel. We would like to invite you to take on the general management of our new property in Chicago. At the end of the email, a number, the proposed salary, made Amy hold her breath again. It was almost double what she was currently making. An opportunity that, a year ago would have seemed an impossible dream. Amy closed the email without replying. She needed time to process. For the rest of the day, the offer hammered in her mind as she went about her usual tasks. Around 4 o'clock, her office door opened without the usual 3-tap knock. Chloe came in, carrying a colorful folder of drawings. "I finished early today," she announced, placing the folder on the desk. "The teacher let us out early because it's her birthday." "Lucky you," Amy replied automatically, trying to push the email from her thoughts. Chloe tilted her head, studying Amy with that perceptive gaze that always seemed to see beyond appearances. "You're different today," the girl observed. "Like when you have a secret." Amy couldn't help but smile. The girl's intuition was astonishing. "Actually, I got some news today. A job offer." "What kind of job?" Chloe asked, opening her drawing folder and taking out colored pencils, seemingly uninterested. But Amy knew she was paying full attention. "To manage another hotel. In another city." Chloe's fingers froze over the paper. Slowly, she looked up. "Are you leaving, best friend?" The question, so direct, so laden with restrained emotion, hit Amy like a physical blow. It wasn't just a professional matter, she realized. It was about bonds, connections, trust built over months. Amy hesitated, unable to find the right words. "I haven't decided anything yet." Chloe nodded slowly, returning to her drawing. But the usual lightness was gone. Her strokes were now firmer, pressing the pencil with unnecessary force against the paper. "Is it a nice hotel?" she finally asked, without looking up. "It seems so. It's new in Chicago." "Is Chicago far from here?" "Quite far, yes." Chloe continued drawing in silence. Amy felt a lump in her throat, watching the small, focused figure in front of her. "Do you like it there?" Chloe asked suddenly. "Chicago? I've never lived there, actually." "Then why would you go?" The childish logic, so simple and direct, made Amy smile sadly. Sometimes, in grown-up life, we have to consider other things besides what we already know. New experiences, new challenges. Chloe finally dropped the pencil and looked directly at Amy. "Don't you like it here anymore?" "Of course I do, Chloe. I like it here very much." "Then why do you want to leave?" Before Amy could answer, a knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Matthew entered, looking slightly surprised to see his daughter. "Chloe, I didn't know you were back from school already." "The teacher had a birthday," she explained briefly, returning to her drawing. Matthew looked from Chloe to Amy, sensing the tense atmosphere. "Did something happen?" Amy hesitated. She hadn't planned on mentioning the offer so soon, certainly not before having a clear answer in her own mind. But Chloe's sad gaze made it impossible to keep it a secret. "I received a job offer," Amy explained, "from the Ellison chain to manage their new hotel in Chicago." Matthew stood motionless for a moment, processing the information. His face, always controlled, revealed nothing but a slight surprise. "Ellison Hotels." "Impressive. I haven't answered yet," Amy added quickly. "It's just an initial proposal." Matthew nodded slowly. "I see." He approached the desk, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Chloe, could you give us a minute? I think I saw Laura in the hallway." Chloe looked at her father, then at Amy, a serious expression on her small face. "Aren't you going to talk about Amy leaving?" "We're going to talk about work," Matthew replied softly. "Just for a minute." Reluctantly, Chloe put her pencils back in the folder. Before leaving, she looked one last time at Amy. "Promise you won't decide anything without telling me first." "I promise," Amy replied, her heart aching. When the door closed, a heavy silence settled in the office. Matthew sat in the chair his daughter had just vacated. "Ellison is an excellent opportunity," he said finally. "Victoria Laurent has a good eye for talent. You know her." "The hotel world is small," Matthew shrugged. "We're competitors in some cities, but there's mutual respect." More silence. Amy could feel the weight of expectation, the unasked question hanging between them. "I didn't apply for this position," she felt the need to explain. "They reached out to me." "Of course they did. The results you've achieved here wouldn't go unnoticed." Matthew studied her with that intensity that always made her feel transparent. Have you made a decision? No, Amy answered honestly. It's all very new and complicated. Matthew nodded, seeming to understand the unspoken layers of that complication. I assume Ellison will offer a competitive package. They already have. It's substantial. I imagine so. Matthew leaned back in his chair. I'm not going to try to beat their offer, Amy. It wouldn't be fair to you. The statement took Amy by surprise. I'm not asking you to. I know. A small smile touched his lips. What I mean is, your decision shouldn't be based on numbers alone. It should be about what you really want. Amy felt a wave of emotion she struggled to control. It wasn't just about money, it never had been. It was about belonging, purpose, connections that went far beyond an employment contract. If you decide to go, we'll be cheering for you, Matthew continued, his voice softer. But if you decide to stay, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You'll continue to be the best part of this place. Amy's eyes met his, surprised by the frankness of his statement. It wasn't just a professional compliment, it was an acknowledgement of what she had become to the hotel, to Chloe, and perhaps even to him. I need some time to think, Amy said at last. Of course. Matthew stood up. Take all the time you need. At the door, he stopped and turned. Just one thing, Amy. Regardless of your decision, you've left a mark here that won't be forgotten. When she was alone, Amy turned to the window, looking out at the city. Chicago represented progress, challenge, professional recognition. But here she had found so much more than a job. She had found purpose, a place where her presence made a difference. She had found Chloe with her magic shoes and wisdom beyond her years. The decision that had seemed so rational in the morning was now wrapped in layers of emotion that Amy couldn't ignore. Over the weekend, Amy pondered. She made lists of pros and cons, researched Chicago, calculated living costs, future opportunities. Everything pointed to accepting the offer. But then she remembered the note written in bright blue pencil, tucked into her planner. She remembered the drawing of the two of them holding hands, pinned with a magnet in her office. She remembered the question asked with worried blue eyes, "Are you leaving, best friend?" On Monday, Amy arrived at the hotel earlier than usual. Her reply email to Victoria Laurent was short and direct, thanking her for the opportunity but declining the offer. There was no regret, only a strange sense of peace. Some decisions couldn't be explained by logic or ambition. They were simply the recognition that sometimes you are already exactly where you're supposed to be. In the afternoon, she received a message from Matthew, asking her to meet him in his office when she had a moment. Amy knew what he wanted to discuss. He had probably been informed by Victoria of her refusal. Matthew's office, as on the top floor of the hotel, had a panoramic view of the city. Elegant and minimalist, it reflected its occupant's personality. "Amy, come in," he invited when she knocked. "Please, have a seat." Amy noticed something different on his desk. A dark wood frame, face down, and next to it a folder with documents. "Victoria called me this morning," Matthew began without preamble. "She was quite disappointed." "I imagined so. She asked if I had made a counteroffer." A small smile appeared on his face. "I was tempted to take the credit, but I told her the truth that the decision was entirely yours." Amy nodded, not trusting her voice at that moment. Matthew picked up the frame and turned it over, revealing the drawing Chloe had made months ago, the two figures holding hands in front of the hotel, now professionally framed. "Chloe wanted you to have this for your office." Amy took the frame, touched by the gesture. "It's perfect, thank you." Matthew then pushed the folder toward her. "And this is from the hotel, or rather from me." Intrigued, Amy opened the folder and found a contract. Not a simple renewal, but a promotion to Director of Operations, with expanded responsibilities and a salary that, while not matching Ellison's offer, was a significant recognition of her value. "Matthew, I didn't stay expecting." He raised a hand, gently interrupting her. "That's not why you stayed, I know, and that's not why I'm offering this. It's because you deserve it, and because the Sterling Grand needs you." He paused, his eyes meeting hers with sincerity. "This place, it's yours too. in a way that Chicago perhaps never could be. Amy looked at the contract, at the framed drawing, and then at Matthew. His words echoed a truth she had already discovered on her own. "Thank you," she said simply, a smile lighting up her face, "for understanding." As Amy left the office, carrying the frame and the new contract, she saw Chloe waiting by the elevator, as if she had somehow known the outcome of the meeting. When the girl saw her, her face lit up with a smile that was worth more than any salary in Chicago. "You stayed," Chloe said, not a question, but a happy statement. "I stayed," Amy confirmed, showing her the frame. "And look what I got for my office." "It's so you never forget," Chloe explained seriously, "even when you're sad or tired." Amy felt her eyes tear up. "I won't forget, I promise." And in that moment, between the floors of a hotel that had become so much more than a workplace, Amy knew she had made the right choice. The best part wasn't in the contract or the title, it was in the small hands that now held hers, in the smile that greeted her every day, in the quiet certainty of having found her place in the world. Amy smiled. And she stayed. Spring arrived with an explosion of color, transforming the city after a long winter. The Sterling Grand Hotel sparkled in the morning sun, its windows glinting like diamonds. 6 months had passed since Amy had turned down the offer from Chicago. 6 months of growth, and the ever-deepening certainty that some decisions, however illogical on paper, are perfectly right in the heart. The hotel lobby was buzzing with activity. A group of tourists was checking in. Executives moved about with their briefcases, and the new pianist, one of Amy's initiatives, filled the air with soft jazz notes. "Good morning, Miss Patterson." Amy smiled, hearing the enthusiastic greeting from Jennifer, now the front desk manager, the same Jennifer who, months ago, had resisted her leadership. Today, she was one of her most loyal collaborators. "Good morning, Jennifer. How's the traffic today?" "Above average for a Tuesday. The group from Toronto has already arrived." Amy crossed the lobby with confident strides, occasionally stopping to greet regular guests by name. The Sterling Grand was no longer just an efficient hotel, it was a place with personality, with soul. A familiar laugh echoed through the space. Amy turned and saw Chloe running between the sofas, pursued by Laura, who was trying, and without much success, to get the girl to slow down. "Amy!" Chloe exclaimed upon seeing her, immediately changing direction. Now 7 years old, Chloe had grown a few inches. Her blonde curls were longer, but her blue eyes held the same mix of curiosity and wisdom. Good morning, little explorer," Amy smiled, bending down to receive the hug that would inevitably come. "Where's your dad?" "Finishing a call," Chloe replied, pointing towards the elevators. "He said he's taking us to lunch today." "Us?" "Yes, you too," Chloe frowned, worried about a possible misunderstanding. These lunches had become a bi-weekly tradition, a time for the three of them to talk outside the formal hotel environment. Amy offered her hand to Chloe, who took it immediately. Together, they walked to the elevator, the small hand fitting perfectly in hers. "Did you know that today is the 1-year anniversary of you finding my magic shoes?" Chloe asked as they went up. Amy looked at her, surprised. "You remember the exact date?" "Daddy remembers. He said it was the day that changed everything." Upon entering the office, Chloe immediately went to her usual spot, the small sofa by the window, which now had colorful cushions and a small shelf with books and drawing supplies. "I'm going to make a special anniversary drawing," she declared, grabbing her sketchbook. While Chloe drew intently, Amy reviewed the latest quarterly reports. The numbers were impressive, not just in terms of occupancy and revenue, but also in guest satisfaction scores and employee retention. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Matthew entered, his suit as impeccable as ever, but with a more relaxed expression than one could have imagined a year ago. "I see my daughter has already settled in," he commented with a smile, watching Chloe engrossed in her drawing. "As always," Amy replied. "Apparently, we're celebrating an anniversary today." Matthew approached her desk. "Sire, the day of the magic shoes. How could I forget?" There was a gleam in his eyes that made Amy think about how people can change when they allow themselves to be truly seen. Matthew was no longer just the formal, distant owner. He was a more present father, a more approachable leader, a man who occasionally smiled for no apparent reason. He walked to the shelf behind Amy's desk, where various objects told the story of the past year, awards the hotel had received, photos from events, small mementos of special moments. But in the center of the shelf, in a place of honor, was a frame containing Chloe's original drawing, the two figures holding hands in front of the hotel. Below the drawing, handwritten in that distinctive childish script, was a simple phrase, "Amy, my best friend." Matthew touched the frame lightly. "This still gets to me." "Me too," Amy confessed. "Every day." Chloe approached with her new drawing. "I'm done." "This is to celebrate." The drawing showed three figures holding hands, two adults and a child in the middle, in front of the hotel. Above them, a large yellow sun and the phrase "My family" written in colorful letters. Amy felt her eyes well up as Matthew put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, his expression mirroring the same emotion. In that moment, looking at the drawing, at Chloe, at Matthew, and then at the frame on the shelf, Amy was filled with a quiet, profound certainty. A year ago, she was an